In this video, me and my homie James Piercey rank our top 5 young cores in the NBA. Tap in. Enjoy.
Sound 42. Turn it up. It's the Chop Not Slap Show. Sochan, Ron C and DJ Candlestick.
Shop Stars OVO Gang.
DJ Candlestick. One time for the homie DJ Screw. Already. I'm feeling throwed in this bitch.
The Rockets Chop Shop merch store is up and running, and right now, just for our listeners, everything is 20% off. 20% off everything. Make sure you click the banner at the top of the page to get the coupon code. On there is 20% off everything in the store. You know, you can go grab you a Men Praying Hands t-shirt, the CSG t-shirts, get you a H-Town, down, 10 toes down t-shirt. We try to keep it real Houston. We try to keep it real Rockets. We try to keep it real at the end of the day. So yeah, keep rocking with us and we're going to keep dropping heat.
This is something I know.
Welcome to another episode of the Chop Shop Pod. I'm going to be hosting this today with a special guest. I got my bro, James. What's good, man? Long time no speak.
Yeah, too long, man. Happy to be back. Excited about this topic. Let's get it.
All right, so obviously, there's been a lot of buzz on social media about which young team has the best talent, which team is in the best situation. So we're going to try to make y'all mad and stir some controversy and try to give you our list of players that we think are, of teams that we think are the best based on certain criteria. Now, this is from an article that James wrote titled, "Where Does the Rockets Young Core Rank in the NBA?" It's going to be in the description of this podcast. So check out the article to see kind of his detailed and reasoning behind, some of the ranks that he put in. But we're going to talk about it today. And let's set the table, bro, of the criteria for this. So from the article, you would set the criteria that these teams have to be teams that are teams that don't have an established player already, right? The player that is, a veteran that's already established on the team that is that could impact their winning. Like for example, Portland was excluded because Dame is still currently actively on their roster, right?
Yeah. So the criteria gets a little bit murky with like a couple of teams, especially the Memphis Grizzlies. I struggled with. They're definitely a young team. Obviously, like all their best guys are 25 and under. But I just felt like I'm really trying to look at teams where generally the most important players are rookies and sophomores and maybe third-year players, like rebuilding teams. The Memphis is certainly not a rebuilding team.
Yeah, they're not, and they haven't. And I think the easy way that it helps me kind of decide these teams, to think about the teams that have been actively trying to lose, right? So yeah. If we go to it's 5 teams that are going to be on this list and we're going to rank them. Houston Rockets, we all know, if you're watching this channel, you know that the Rockets have not been putting out the best brand of basketball over the past 3 years after trading James Harden in January of 2021. Orlando's been up and down for a while, but they really kicked off their full-blown, like, we're going to tank again. I think they've tanked multiple times. But in March of 2021, after trading Vooch to Chicago, OKC, some people want to say it started with the Russ trade. It didn't, because they kind of extended out being competitive another year with Chris Paul on the roster, even making the playoffs and facing our Rockets in the first round in the bubble. So they traded CP3 out of OKC in November of 2020. So they began theirs in 2020. San Antonio is one of the newer teams on the tank radar, trading away DeJounte Murray in 2022, and prior to that, trading away Debo, what's his name, DeMar DeRozan, before, and blowing up that kind of little middle of the pack team that they had. And the Detroit Pistons, kind of confusing, bro. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I guess it seems like they've been tanking for over a decade, bro, or they're just bad. I'm really not sure. I don't know. What's your read on the Pistons and their situation?
Yeah, man. I mean, the Pistons put together. I don't know the history of like their general management very well, or like whether Weaver's been there for a long time or not. But they put together some gruesome win now teams over recent times, man. Like those like Andre Drummond, Greg Monroe led teams. Like that's nasty stuff, man. Oh my god, yeah. Like two bigs, and neither of them are even all that good. And then they tried Blake Griffin, and like, you know, Blake Griffin was a really good player at that time, but it wasn't enough. And so they've just been like teetering on irrelevance for a long time. And now the past, you know, I guess few years since they traded Griffin, maybe they finally are like full blown tanking.
Yeah, and we'll include them in there because as we know, they actually have been on the same tier as the Rockets and some of these other teams. Some of your favorite teams that are going to be excluded from this, you think about Charlotte. They were trying to be competitive last year. They had a lot of injuries, veteran-filled roster. I would, you know, the injuries made them pivot to it, but I don't think tanking as a program is something that they wanted to do. We talked about Portland already. You talked on Memphis. Obviously, the teams like New Orleans, Toronto, they've all been trying to make the playoffs. So these are teams that you know, wouldn't fit the criteria. Okay, so we've kind of set the table for the type of teams that fit this criteria. So I wanted you're gonna go through your list. We're gonna start from the back end all the way down to the number one team, and then as you give yours, I'll give mine and we'll talk about it. So what is your top five? Who is as far as the team that has the best young core right now? What is your number 5?
My number 5 is the Detroit Pistons. Unfortunately, having just talked about their history, there's a recurring theme for me when I'm looking at a lot of these young cores, man. There seems to be this move towards doubling and tripling and really quadrupling down on like big playmakers and having multiple guys on the floor that can put the ball on the floor and make a play. And this is like really a driving philosophy, I think, of a lot of rebuilds right now. And I get it to an extent. I do think, of course, there's plenty of value in having multiple playmakers. But I think we're going to eventually learn the lesson that, like, you need floor spacers, you need play finishers, like, you need all sorts of, like, there's a diminishing return, in my opinion, on playmaking to where it's like, if you don't have guys that just can shoot the rock, then, like, I don't know who you're making the plays for. It sounds like you're going to keep kind of resetting the possession and like, you know, you need the ball to you need guys who, when the ball lands in their hand, they can hit an open shot because of the defensive attention that the playmakers have generated. And I'm not really seeing that in Detroit. Like, all their core guys are non-shooters, and so I don't love the fit that way. And then even from a pure talent accumulation perspective, I'm just not like they have really good young players, but I don't think they have as much talent as the other teams.
Yeah, I also had Detroit number 5 on the rankings of best young cores of these tanking level teams, and a lot of the reasons you said. I also just because if you look at their roster, you know, Cade's injury to me is something that I would have to see what he looks like. You know, Cade already had issues with explosion. As just a straight up athlete. He's not known for being an explosive athlete, obviously elite size for his position, good IQ and all that. But coming off an injury, we know that takes time. I think that does impact their arc of development and the levels of their team. Also, like you pointed out, drafting Ivey, who I love Jaden Ivey. I love, obviously, the Thompson, Asor, having them there. Jalen Duren might be one of the best centers in the league one day. The problem with them is that, like you said, the shooting is definitely one thing. And I think when I think about just their crop of talent, it's kind of all over the place. There's no like it doesn't fit necessarily as well as you want it to. Plus, with the shooting being a premium, not saying like a lot of these other teams have great shooters. I just don't know if I can say that I trust what they've been doing to put them any higher. And if Cade was not hurt, they would be ranked higher because we would have the recency to see how great of a player that he is and can be in, you know, second year Cade. Maybe after the All-Star break last year, he would have been better. But yeah, I just don't know. I mean, the Wiseman and Duren double big lineup, very intriguing, but you know, if that's your kind of your bread and butter that you're going to think is going to go forward with Cade and all those guys. I don't know. It's kind of funny right now.
Man, I really wanted to touch on that too. Like, I really am puzzled by the decision to acquire Wiseman. I felt like Jalen Duren was having a very strong rookie year. I don't know why you don't reward that. Like, I understand there's some benefit in internal competition, but like, what did Duren do to have his job pressed that way? You know, like, to me, if I were the Pistons, I'd be feeling like, this is great. We've got our young big of the future. And meanwhile, Isaiah Stewart is pretty good too. And like, I see him as a combo big. He can spend some time at the 5 and the 4. But those two guys, that's enough at the 5 to me. And then Marvin Bagley's there too. Like, they got all these bigs. They don't really have wings except a Sor. You know, to me, they have 2 point guards in the backcourt, which is fine, except neither of them project to be like elite shooters. And so I'm just not sure about the fit there either. I feel like Weaver is very staunch about like just assembling as much talent as he can. And my philosophy gears a little bit more towards finding talent that fits together myself. So I'm just not really loving what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, those are great points. And looking, I mean, I like some of the moves they made in free agency to help their core out. Obviously, bringing in Monte Morris as a backup guard, some guy that can space the floor. Joe Harris, hopefully he's back to his form. I love Bogdanovic, as a player. So they have some good pieces, and for just for the viewers, this is not on who's going to have a better record or anything like that. This is just strictly based on just draft moves and talents. And yeah, I see taking the swing on reclamation projects. I just don't like how their roster fits. So I also have them 5th. So yeah, I'm going to go with that for them. All right. So who's your number 4?
My number 4 is the Orlando Magic. I said this in the article, but the margin between the Magic and the next team is extremely thin. Like, you could really make the case either way. I once we get past the Pistons, we're getting to teams that I really admire what they're doing, like every other team remaining. They suffer from some of the same problems. I think they're trying to triple down on big playmakers, and that's all well and good, but I just feel like I'm worried about the spacing. But I do think that one of their really key pieces has been a good floor spacer so far, so it's different. And I'm talking about Franz Wagner, who is just a beautiful like multi-positional Swiss Army knife type of player who does give them a lot of flexibility moving forward compared to Detroit, who I just feel are like very inflexible in general. I'm not really sure if it's the right place for Anthony Black. I just wonder if that's a little bit of a redundancy with Paolo Banchero, and like certainly Banchero is the more talented of the two. So we'll see how that plays out, but they've got a lot of nice pieces. Also, I should say this, I called Wendell Carter Jr. a non-shooting big in my article, and a Magic fan very graciously corrected me on Twitter and said, yo, Carter shot like 36% last year from deep, so that's a nice piece that they have too. I like Wendell Carter Jr.
Okay, so I have Orlando much higher than that.
Okay. And
I'll go into detail, but my number 4 team is San Antonio. And the reason I have them at number 4 is because, one, their pivot to tanking, quote unquote, is fairly new, and they don't have, to me, the level of talent that I would need and require for them to be over any of the other teams. As much as I love Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell and some of the kind of the great young scrappy players they have, the upside for those players isn't as high as like Apollo or Jalen Green or Amen Thompson or some of the other teams that have more bluer chips than they have. So I'm going to dock them for that. I feel Wemby, obviously the Wemby factor is there. In the article, you did point out that assuming no injury, that he's going to be probably one of the he's going to be an impact player. The article just came out saying that San Antonio Spurs are basically planning on load managing him this first year. I think that kind of gives you an idea of what type of work that it's going to be a long process to get Wemby to where he needs to be that level of player. And there's a world he doesn't get there. So I'm not going to just give them all the assumptions just because Wemby's on their roster. So just for that, obviously they have a great coach, great system, all that is great, but talent-wise, I think that's where they're lacking. Some of the other cores, to me, are just better. They just have more options. If one guy doesn't fail, you have multiple options. I do count that. If Wemby fails, San Antonio is still a tanking team. And I don't think that's the case for a lot of the other franchises.
Yeah, no, they have a much thinner margin for error that way. That's true. Like, He's the only player on the team with true like superstar potential, I would say. Like Keldon Johnson might make an all-star team in his career and he might not, but he doesn't. I don't think he has like star upside would be a generous way to describe Keldon Johnson. So like I do feel what you're saying. I guess it's it's kind of a matter of personal preference or like it's a little bit subjective. I'm just willing to invest that much in Wembenyama that to me I'm like I think this is comfortably the best prospect in the NBA, and they're generally the best player is the most important thing you can have, and so I'm putting them higher. But I see your point too. Like if Wemby fails, the Spurs are in a lot of trouble, whereas the Rockets could, just using the Rockets as an example, but they could afford for Jalen to fail because Amin might be the guy, or like there are a lot more options. Last thing I would add, I have a lot of faith in Jeremy Sochan. I really think he's going to be like a really good NBA player, like a starting caliber, probably make all defensive teams and stuff. So he weighs into my assessment of their young core as well, for sure.
Yeah, they have. I mean, honestly, as far as floors, I think they have a lot of high floor young players. Like,
yeah,
and coach too is a high floor coach. It's just if I'm looking at, if I would say which team has a high chance to be successful, I'd probably say the Spurs. Like I'm not going to count them out as an organization that can figure it out with some talent. It's just like I'm looking at their rookies right now. Victor from this year. They have Sir Jabari Rice is on there. They have Champagne from last year as coming into a second year play. Great player, but not a blue chipper. Malachi Branham, great player, not a blue chipper. Sochan is to me, he's a blue chip defensive prospect, great supporting player. But once again, I'm thinking about some of those other rosters and seeing the impact players they're going to have that would be able to raise the floor to a team and take you places rather than just a defensive kind of stalwart. The Lamar Stevens, Charles Bass, it's just kind of to me, they have a roster full of like mid to late lottery picks, which is okay. And some later draft pick guys, but just off of cores, I think you're going to have to bank on a lot of the Wembenyama types, and they're lacking there. So that's why I kind of docked them.
Yeah, one more thing I would say on the Spurs, man, is what they do this season is pretty crucial. Like if they're going to load manage Wembenyama, which maybe is the right thing to do, then they probably want to finish with like one of the worst records in the league, realistically, right? Because then they get another crack at the lottery. Maybe you're pairing him with Ron Holland or Mataz Buzelis, and then you've really got your group moving forward, Whereas if they mess around and get the 12th pick in this upcoming draft or something, now it's like you got Wembenyama, but you don't have much around him. So it's something to look at. Sure.
That is true, and I think once again, just June 22 before they departed from Murray, may want to like take a couple of cracks at it. I'm wondering if they actually do that. That may be interesting because if we were looking at this from a big picture, like cap space, front office, all that stuff integrated into the best situations going forward, this list would look totally different for me.
Yeah.
Honestly. But okay, so number 3, who you got?
Number 3, I got the Rockets, man. Okay. Happy to, I kind of wish I had them higher, but the margins are pretty thin between everybody. But one thing I really like, and again, I said this in the article, but I think the Rockets have like the widest range of talent. We have the most player types that have star potential, and probably just the biggest quantity of players with star potential too. So there's a lot to love about what the Rockets have going on, man. Yeah,
I also have the Rockets number 3. Along with you, and for the same reasons. Like we look at our young core, Jalen's class obviously being the first class. You come away with Jalen and Alperen Sengun. So some would say that Alp was like the steal of that class to be as far as a guy that could be a star upside player. The back end of that draft with Garuba and J Gub obviously are gone now, but you still kept your 2 high upside talents. Going into the next season, getting Jabari Smith and Tari Eason. To me, both of them, I think Jabari, and I said this in a video that was very controversial. I had him number 2 on the highest upside players on the roster. Just I like guys that play defense, right? And I think that if you are a player, if you're like I always say this, scoring is a very valuable skill in the NBA. But if that's all you can do, then it does limit. And that usually will put you, especially on a good, well-built team, as a 6-man. If your main trick is I can get a bucket, it puts you at that 6-man range. And so, not saying that like for any of our players that aren't Jabari, that's all they could do, but it's easier to slot you if you're a guy that could defend you. I can't play you off the court. And I think that's why I really like his upside, because if the scoring does come along and he is the height and everything put it together, I think Jabari is in that blue chip range, and that's why he was rumored to go number 1 in his draft. So you have that. Then you have Tari Eason, which to me is in a Sochan mold of more of that utility two-way, high impact winning player that will be a glue guy on a championship level team if they pan out to be what they're going to be. So we have that on the roster. Then this year with Amen Thompson and Cam Whitmore, 2 really, really high upside players. Obviously, Cam slipping to 20, having top 10 potential. If he pans out, that's something. I think Amen to me is the best prospect on the Rockets right now. I don't have to see him play a full season to know that, just based on just like a lot of people think Wemby was the best prospect in the last 20 some years. You don't need guys. Okay, let me. I'm going to do a tangent real quick. You don't need to see a player play to judge their upside. Upside is largely based on physical profile and skill sets at baseline, and based on their physical profile and skill sets, projecting outward to see if this player steadily increases their skills and just pans out to be what they're projected to be. Which one looks better? So if you have a 5'10" point guard that does the same thing as a 7-foot point guard, they have different upsides based on height. I don't have to see them play. You know what I mean? And I think that's what people are getting caught up on. But
man,
it is. I mean, yeah, you real quick. You can't think about a world where the Rockets, if you just look at core, and I'll make my arguments of why I have them 3 later on as we go down. But I think talent wise, we may have like the deepest pool of potential talent in this group.
I think so. I really think so. And that you almost want to put them number 1 by that logic, but they're just good cases for the other teams. I'm curious to see why you've got Orlando ahead of them. I'm guessing we have the same number 1. But let me just pick up on what you were saying, man. It's a bit of a pet peeve argument of mine. Like I see a lot of times when people advocate for trading high lottery picks for proven players, it's like the 2 in the hand is worth 1 in the bush thing. It's like, but when you're projecting futures, man, you're taking pre-NBA stuff into account. Like, so Bari has a year of NBA experience under his belt, right? But that doesn't make it any easier, really, to project what he's going to be versus Amen Thompson, because Bari was really bad as a rookie. So unless you think he's going to be really bad, you're still taking his college stuff into account, which I think you have to fairly evaluate him, right? So, so then why can't you say that Amen Thompson is the best prospect on the team if we're taking pre-draft stuff into account anyway? It doesn't really make logical sense to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people factor in what they've seen already, but what you're seeing is mostly garbage. Like, I'm not going to say if I judge Jalen Green off of what I've seen already, then he's not going to be. Yeah, I mean, just scoring inefficiently. What does that tell me? He's an inefficient scorer. But what do? We start assuming, okay, he has a quick first step. He has this and this. He can do. Then you start building that upside. To me, that doesn't change by me seeing young players struggle in the NBA to make me be like, I got to see him struggle to know that what their upside is. Because
we knew that he had an insane first step in the G League, right? Like, that's not new information. Yeah.
That's why he was number 2, right? Mine and what's your number 2? What's your number 2? Let's do that.
Yeah. So my number 2 is the Spurs. I suspect your number 2 is Orlando. It gets a little difficult to. Yeah, because I guess we already talked about those teams. I don't know if you want to take the conversation.
Now I'll expand on why I put Orlando. I think the reason I put Orlando is because, okay, you look at their roster this year. I know you liked Ant Black coming out. I guess you don't like the fit, but in a vacuum, I do like Ant Black as a prospect. To size, I think he's a great field player, good IQ. Probably adds. He is a bit redundant to what they're doing, but it's only redundant if you value how much do they value Markelle Fultz, how much do they value Cole Anthony. I think to me those guys are probably going to be traded at some point to clear a way for it. So just looking at what they've done since Franz Wagner has come in to the NBA, and I'm going to line them up with the Rockets. Jalen and Franz. Jalen has a higher upside. I think Franz has an insane upside as well. I think he's probably the most underrated player in young player history right now. and Franz has been the most consistent in that class as far as just efficiency, games played. He's there. He does what he's supposed to do. He's very versatile on both ends of the court. I really value Franz Wagner. I think he's going to be an all-star level player, if not already. If you guys haven't seen what he does when he plays for his country, Germany, the dude, he looks like Luka Doncic in Europlay. Like, it's crazy. You look at him compared to Jalen. I think Jalen probably has an upside, but to me, that's almost a wash. Then the Paolo and Jabari thing. Paolo is a better prospect to me than Jabari Smith. For all the same reasons I love Jabari, Paolo has the same upside with him. They're both bigger for their positions. They both have elite skill sets. I think Paolo is an underrated defender, especially at the NBA level. Where he kind of leaves Jabari is the playmaking. Paolo runs pick and rolls, and you can give him the ball in multiple positions. Hopefully one day he'll be a triple level scorer, but the mid post and also the interior game is already there. And here's one thing I really love: he gets to the line like a 50-year player. So all of that's already there for him. I just think that they have talent on their roster as well, even in the peripheral positions. They don't have a lot of the Jason Tate models. A lot of their guys are high-level lottery picks, even though they kind of fall off with how consistent they are. I think their players can match up with ours as far as talent for talent. They're just better in right now, and I think that's why I give them. Right now, they're better. What are the factors against us? Obviously, Coach Silas. I know people don't like us bringing him back up. The lack of structure the Rockets have had under their old coaching regime was something that inhibited a lot of what our guys would look like. So if we made this list next summer after Coach Udoka has really worked with Jalen, Sengun, these group of young kids and play with get them up to par and playing winning basketball like the Magic did. People don't know the Magic tanked the last stretch of the season because they could have probably pushed it to 40 wins if they wanted to, but they kind of shut down some of their key players. Some guys got injured and they just kind of tanked the last few games to try to, secure a good draft position. So all of that to say, I just think that they're a year ahead of us with the same level of talent. And I think that's why I'm going to dock them for that. The Rockets for that.
No doubt, man. As I said, to me, the thinnest margin in this whole thing is between Orlando and Houston. I think those situations are very comparable. Orlando's got a little more proof of concept from having had a good season last year, but like on paper, you can make either case, and I'm not necessarily inclined to argue. I would say this for Orlando: a lot rests for me on Anthony Black taking some kind of a shooting leap. He needs to be able to function as with some off-ball value, in my opinion, because I think Banchero is going to be basically the engine, right? And Black is an engine type of player. So to me, it's can you function within the context of a team that has a different engine? Because Banchero is likely to be a better engine, So he's got to offer some auxiliary skills for me. But if he can just get his three ball up to 35% on 4 attempts per game, something in that vicinity, then they could be really scary, man, for sure. They got a lot of good players. They got size at every position, scary. Jett Howard, I thought was a bit of a reach, but at the same time, is a really good fit for the roster. So that's it'll be interesting to see what he is, and that could be another pretty big swing factor for them.
Yeah, I just think their coaching structure really did help accentuate some of their strengths and things for me to see. And I'm really high on Franz Wagner. I think he's him and Paolo. If all else fails, I think that duo is going to be something special. But it's not the team that's the most talented as far as how they're going to win games and things right now. But our number ones are the same, basically. So you had San Antonio, you already talked about it. Our number ones are the same. And you can go ahead and give us the reason why you have them number one.
Yeah, man. It's the Oklahoma City Thunder, and by far more than anything, it's because of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's by far the best player in this group in terms of proven production. He looks like a kind of an MVP candidate caliber player. It's pretty hard to deny that. He just finished up an efficient 31 point per game season, I think. And he's also a very capable passer. He's a 6-7 point guard. He's one of the most unique players in the league stylistically, and I think that translates into the production. That strange zigzaggy rim pressure style is really hard to guard. He's very unorthodox, and it makes him very unpredictable. Kid is incredible. And then on top of that, they've got really good players like Jalen Williams was, if Tari Eason wasn't the steal of the last draft, it's because Jalen Williams was, realistically, right? I don't love the fit between SGA and Giddey, but I think that if I'm right about that and it's not a good fit, they will get really good value for Giddey down the line. So it still counts to me, And then in terms of their incoming rookies, like I said, Kassan Wallace, I think is really like a can't miss. Like he's been really good in Summer League too, man. You could tell this kid is just going to be a dog on defense. And then if nothing else, a good shooter on the other end of the floor. So like that's a role right there, And then Holmgren is a player I really believe in. I don't know if he's going to be like an offensive superstar or not, but I think he's going to be like an all defensey type of guy that at least is like a really strong play finisher on the offensive end as well. So they got a lot going on. That's before you consider that they have the most draft picks ever, but that doesn't really conversation. But like it's kind of scary, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think for them, the argument I made for Orlando is OKC, but like 100% more. Like they have a good combination of actual blue chip talent, plus it's blue chip talent that has delivered and showed some of the potential that they could have. I'm looking at their roster right now. They have Chet is going to be coming back for his redshirt rookie year. They have Kassan Wallace, like you pointed out, on there. Ty Washington shows up on there, which is strange to see. Underrated name that nobody really talks about is Ousmane Dieng. I think Dieng is going to be somebody. I liked what I seen from him in Summer League. He looked like he was really developing his game a little bit more, and just adding more to it, because to me coming in, he was real stiff. So just working on that offensive side. The two Jalens, both steals, Arkansas Jalen Williams and J-Dub. To me, being in that atmosphere, watching them play in those high-pressure games and seeing that you actually have players that could contribute to winning at the highest level is important. And I haven't even got to, obviously Trey Mann is, Josh Giddey, and then you get to SGA. SGA is a first-team All-NBA point guard. I mean, I think that's enough said for that. At his young age, they really have, in addition to all their draft picks, in addition to having what seems like an elite coach, they have, probably the best situation. I think in any of these arguments, whether it's situation going forward, talent-wise, I think it's them. And that is going to be the standard for most of the teams. Now, for the Rockets, tying this back to the Houston Rockets, one of the reasons that, the Rockets have been trying to lean on, and you'll notice OKC didn't really make any big splashes in free agency or to make any trades, is because they have SGA. All these teams are still, we have guys we think can be that, and all these teams are still looking for that, the anchor of their team. And I think they're already ahead of the game in that, to where they're the point that the next moves they're going to be making is adding like a bigger name to come and just solidify what they're doing. So yeah, I really love some of the moves that they've made, even though it didn't make sense to start.
Yeah. So the Thunder, like, realistically, they're never going to be able to use all of those picks to draft and develop players and have them on the roster. It would just be, I guess, impossible. So they're going to have to make a big consolidation trade eventually. They're probably just waiting for the right guy, to hit the market. Like, I don't know if they like Embiid. It's possible they like Embiid. They might not, but I've seen them linked to Siakam. I have a feeling that they're going to feel like, ultimately this is not, like, I really like Pascal Siakam, but probably not the guy for us to, like, blow all our chips on right now. Right. But who's to say what they might do, man? They have a lot of options, and that flexibility is as important as anything else,
Yeah, and that that's a situation a lot of these teams are going to be in. I think if all your players pan out, you're going to have to make decisions. That's always been the case, and for OKC, it could be Giddey. For us, we have those same decisions. If all these players actually turn into what they're going to be, they're going to want money, and you can't just tell them, hey, we're going to pay you X when the market values their skill set. So this is a decision. I'm just from a big picture view for the NBA. I can see a world where, as over the next 3 or 4 years, where the tide starts turning, and some of these teams like the Golden States of the world the Lakers start falling to where we are right now, and the list we just went over are going to be the powerhouse teams, because usually the NBA does have this kind of rhythm to it where cycles happen. And so, yeah, these rosters are going to be the rosters of the future. Like these are going to be your contenders going forward, and it's going to be exciting to see. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, couple things I would say on the Rockets specifically. Firstly, if all of our like core 6 dudes pan out, as you were kind of alluding to, there's no way we could pay them. It scares me to think about it, really, because like, you know, you get attached to these guys to some extent, but we're probably gonna have to pick and choose and eventually land on like, I don't know, maybe 3 of these guys plus Tari, like one of Sengun or Whitmore. Those are kind of my 2 probably strongest candidates. Like, probably won't be part of the long-term future. Like if everybody hits, there are going to be some decisions to be made, man, and they're going to be difficult, right? Second thing I would say is that so much of the Rockets' future now is in Brooklyn's hands, right? And it's going to be interesting to see. I don't really have a lot of faith that the picks are going to be lottery picks, just based on like what Brooklyn's probably most likely to do. But I do think it's very likely that they're going to land in that like 15 to 20 range. And man, Stone has done a really great job in that range of the draft so far. So like that should be scary for everybody else as well. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. With the guys that are going to move, I think it's going to come down to one of the Sengun and Tari group, and then Cam, I'm not sure. I think he's fairly safe. I think him being drafted where he was is going to help the Rockets out in the future, because he slipped for a reason. Basically, he slipped out the lottery. So, in his role on the team, I'm not sure what that's going to be as far as like the dynamic that we have to, and I tweeted this earlier today about teams starting to win and what that means for young guys. Like Cam and the men are coming into a situation where they're winning. So that means the Jabari stuff we saw where he's like the worst player in the NBA and getting 35 minutes a game, that doesn't happen anymore, right? So it's more meritocracy, earn your minutes, do the right things. And to me, that naturally forces guys, unless they're like superstar level and show that early, to be kind of in a slot. Either you're going to slot into being a role player, or you're going to have to show beyond a reasonable doubt that you're a star.
Yep.
And I think it's the best way to evaluate, because all that bad stats, bad team, good stats type of stuff, it is kind of tricky to evaluate. How does Jalen Green, what is his value in the construct of a team that's actually trying to win ball games? Because it does change, when you're not given just free reign to do whatever.
Yeah, man, it's exciting. I can't wait for this season, dude. Can't wait. I'd fast forward if I could.
Yeah, man, it does suck that we didn't get to see man Thompson get some more time.
Yeah,
but appreciate you, bro, for coming out. The article is where does the Rockets young core rank in the NBA? From the Dream Shake. It'll be in the description of this pod. James, let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, man, James Piercey 11 on Twitter. Check me out on the Dream Shake. Also co-host a podcast called Above the Break with Nevin Brown. Thanks for having me, man. Always a great conversation.